We are live here. Dude, what's the bid? Episode 47. 47 episodes. I can't believe it. It's such a large number. 47 episodes. My name is Kevin Hill. I am one of your co hosts here, as always, with Casey Larkin. How are you doing in Florida?
Howdy. Doing well. Just watched Smokey and the Bandit for the first time this afternoon. I completed my homework assignment. So,
Awesome.
yeah, pretty.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's just very entertaining movie. I think my favorite character, probably Fred. Thought that was funny comic relief, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that the world could use a whole lot more bandits, if you will.
What do you think about the dialogue?
I mean, it still seems to apply.
I know, right? They're all smart asses. I mean, it's all this witty comebacks, one-liners, and back and forth.
Right, definitely. I mean, what Big T Justice or whatever the Texas sheriff's name was.
Buford T. Justice, Jackie Gleason.
Justice. Okay, Jackie Gleason. Absolute character. It's funny to see them poking fun at the stadies throughout the whole movie. But no, I mean, it seems like they got the radio lingo correct, like what I know about it. And it's funny, like, a lot of conversations going on these days about fraud, in the industry, a lot of nuclear verdicts, a lot of, safety questions. So, it's pretty amazing. I guess 50 years later, it's still.
I still quote that movie quite a bit. I one of my favorite. Did the letters FO mean anything to you?
Smart Alec.
and when you have Big and little Enos Burdett walking by the trailer saying, anyone who would paint their trailer like this, their rig like this, whatever it is, would show up wearing feathers to a minister's funeral. Like just crazy lines.
It was a good one. I really enjoyed it. Excited to watch it again. Throw some Smokey and the Bandit isms into the lexicon.
You got to.
10-4.
There's some great nuggets in there.
Yeah.
And the second time you watch it, you probably pick up on the witty comeback. It just gets better with the more times you watch it. I've probably seen it 100 times. I watch it every couple times a year.
How many Trans Ams that thing sold?
To get a black Trans Am, right? It's about 4 times the cost of any other Trans Am of those years. It's like $100,000 car.
Wow. Very interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Where's Cusnu? Got a fish on your wall, Casey.
I do have a fish on my wall, dolphin fish. Trying to get, a little bit more fishing going on in my life now that I'm down in Florida these days.
Yeah. We were talking about that just before we hit live. You bought a rod and some tackle.
I did. I went on a absolute spending spree on Amazon. I was playing with AI, trying to figure out exactly what type of rig I needed to give you the best chances fishing here in Jacksonville. It's pretty amazing what you can learn in an instant these days.
It is. It really is. Okay, so I am going to share my screen here. Can you see that? The shipper activity index.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This was the past week, right? A jump, huge jump, 18% increase in shipper searches for capacity. 18% coming into the holiday week. 4th of July is tomorrow, and capacity gets tight, and we saw that in the data and the number of shippers that came onto the website and searched for carriers and capacity last week. And it goes in line with what you're thinking, Casey.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I saw a tweet today. Some broker was being quoted, $10 a mile on all the freight he's trying to get moved. So it's good to see. We've been in a tough time for the market for a long time. Hopefully we can sustain things.
Hopefully so. We'll see what happens after the 4th of July, and then I think the 8th or 9th, are the tariffs going to be paused? Are we going to continue the pause or not? A lot of uncertainty in that. So things will pan out and we'll see what happens, but it's going to be interesting.
Definitely. What were we looking at up there?
Here's by mode, right? They're looking for dry van, open deck. It's usually pretty steady week to week. Saw an uptick in power only over the last week, so a little bit more power only clicks up, and everything did well. As you would expect. 18% jump in searches. You're going to see most of the major modes uptick with that as well.
Huh? I know.
I'm going to skip over the specialized.
I know Reefer's near and dear to Ilya's heart. Should we bring him on? See if he has.
We should, yeah. I mean, I'm getting to that point, but let's bring him on right now.
Cool. I never planned to go through this initially, but smoke him if you got him, right?
Just smoke him if you got him. And here are the regions, the origin points that do we have Ilya up now? Sorry, I can't see my screen anymore.
There he is.
Hey. Happy 47th episode, and congratulations on booking such a high-profile guest.
I know, right?
That's right.
It's been months in the making.
I can imagine. I book up years in advance usually, so. But great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Ilya.
Yeah. Perfect. Anytime. So this is all regional searches, right? This is where searches are happening by shippers as they're searching for carriers and capacity. Atlanta, Chicago, Charlotte, Indianapolis, and Dallas are the top 5 regions, and usually they flip-flop around. Let me get down. I'm going to go all the way down here to reefer. This is where they're searching for reefers, since we have the cold chain person and the expert, the SME in the house with us right now. We'll look at reefer searches. And so they're pretty broad spread, a lot out in California. And everyone's looking for things in Chicago.
Yeah, apparently. They're catching a lot of fish in Lake Michigan. So no, there's nothing worse than spoiled product. So especially during these months, June, July, August, September, it's really not a surprise. I mean, it'd be interesting to see the cyclicality of it seasonally, but I would imagine that people are searching for it now more than 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Interesting. Also, I mean, it looks like there are a lot of people looking for reefer in the Northeast. My brother lives in Boston. He was telling me it's like 90 degrees a week ago. Interesting to look at that trend year over year.
Yeah, I mean, seafood. A lot of seafood comes out of there. Also, pharma corridor. So
Yep.
A lot of pharmas up in the Boston, Jersey, Philadelphia area. So
Okay.
It's always amazing. It's a heat wave in Boston when it's 90. And here in Dallas, it's a very cool summer right now at 90.
True.
yeah, it's crazy how the world works. I know that I was talking to somebody who's in Germany, and just earlier today, and most folks from what I understand, in Germany, or a lot of folks don't have air conditioning because they don't see weather that's super hot. But they were at 105 for a few days just over these last few days, and I mean it's definitely been over 100 here in the Midwest in Indiana. So that's not a good time to not have AC. That's definitely hard, and it's even harder on the products that are moving throughout the U.S. Right?
Yeah.
Definitely. It's wild. Does be the case in Europe.
It's final miles. There's all the major metros. See a lot of final mile, last mile, first mile type of searches. And the sample size of this each week, there's about, or let's just take it on the monthly basis, right? There's about 12,000 unique shippers conducting anywhere from 30 to 40,000 searches for carriers each month on carrier sorts.
Checks out.
Then power only is taking a jump too. I don't know. The surge of imports that everyone talks about, maybe that's a proxy for drayage moves, maybe more drop and hook and trailer pool opportunities becoming available. But yeah, shippers are searching a lot for power only right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then we take regional search trends. And you see the Southwest took a big spike up. And the Northeast went down this week.
It's interesting. Especially given that you said it was cooler in the Southwest, right?
Yeah. Relatively speaking, right? Still 95 degrees. But
true.
The last couple summers in Dallas, last 3 summers, man, I mean, like 15 days in a row of over 100 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many temperature issues we see every July or every August in that corridor between, I think it's between LA and like going through Nevada into Texas.
I-40.
Yeah, even through reefers. I mean,
yeah,
the pavement just kind of renders them ineffective. Actually, if you look at temperature excursions across the board, I mean, there's a lot of overcooling as well. Like that's a huge source of the temperature issue. It's not all hot. It's
interesting.
Cool.
Oh yeah, too much packaging. Like, because a lot of the packaging, right? I mean, whether you're shipping through a reefer, I guess if you're shipping dry too, I mean, a lot of the cold chain products are put into either active refrigerated, kind of like Envirotainer refrigerators, or passive shippers that have phase change material, dry ice, cooling gels, heating packs, whatever, temperature you're shipping in. But if you stack that and then add a reefer on top of that can stay pretty, that can get pretty cold in the payload. So.
Definitely. And that, I don't know, maybe that's a good segue. I think it kind of reminds me. So PAXAFE got its start in IoT, right? From a tracking or visibility perspective. And then it seems like you guys have kind of pivoted nicely these days. Can you tell me a little bit more about kind of the,
evolution?
I guess the impetus behind starting PAXAFE and what that's kind of looked like over the last couple of years?
Tell us your life story. Tell us about PAXAFE. Tell us how you get started. Let's hear your journey.
Yeah,
it's a good segue. So I was in consulting for some number of years before this, and I would say a couple of years specific within pharma consulting. So I saw, oftentimes pharma would kind of bring us in and help and ask for help around, trying to remove the silos amongst all their data. So bring all that data together from their TMS systems, ERPs, visibility, tie it all together and help draft SOPs around it. Like how do we action this? How do we make this data valuable, actionable, operational? That was pretty eye-opening because, I couldn't believe how much investment, how many consultants, how many internal data folks they had doing this, just that. And that was really the catalyst for us to start PAXAFE. So you're right, we did start off with an IoT component. We had, if you look at our original kind of vision deck or pitch deck from 2019, we were pitching effectively the exact same thing that we're selling today. The only difference was we saw hardware as a way to kind of acquire customers quicker, because everybody knew what IoT is. Everybody knows what a dot on the map is, visibility, right? Some of the kind of our broader vision things that we were building at the time, we didn't know if people would understand what we're trying to do before reaching some sort of critical mass or critical scale of having IoT deployed in their networks. So we incorporated the hardware as essentially a what do you call it? A Trojan horse. Like we would show the hardware. Yes, we have visibility. Great. Get on our platform. And then we would slowly introduce all the other stuff. Now, in 2022, probably mid to late 2022, we recognized that, number one, it's very hard to do both, to be a hardware provider and build all of this incredible software and intelligence. And number two, we felt that the maturity in the market was to a point where customers truly understood and asked for the kinds of solutions that we offer on the intelligence side. So we went device agnostic, data agnostic, and that eventually evolved into the platform that we have today. So at a high level, we're a logistics orchestration and decision intelligence platform for cold chain, or for temperature sensitive and high value goods. We help shippers and logistics service providers reduce waste and make quicker, better decisions with regards to their transportation network. The reason why we started, going back to my consulting story and my consulting days, I mean the biggest thing is we recognize shipping temperature sensitive goods, pharmaceuticals, fish, produce, meat, right? Flowers. It's incredibly difficult. But on top of that, we've seen decades of solutions that are out there in the market today. Everything going back to like passive data loggers, right? The temperature data, over the last 10 to 15 years, real-time IoT sensors, temperature GPS, right? Location, shock, tilt, vibration, light. Over the last 10 years, B2B SaaS, like aggregation visibility platforms, risk management platforms, nothing has moved the needle or delivered on the intended outcome of reducing product waste. Every year, product loss keeps going up over the prior year. Operational inefficiencies actually get worse because now you have to have teams kind of manage all of these devices and all of these platforms, and decisions don't get made any quicker. They're still heavily reliant on consultants to basically come in and try to remove the silos amongst all the data. So from our perspective, we kind of asked, what's the point? What's the point of deploying IoT and sensors and all this visibility stuff if you're not reducing product loss and if you're not able to make better decisions? And so that's really the catalyst of why we built what we've built. And we help companies, make those much quicker, much faster data-driven decisions with regards to their planning, transportation, and quality functions in their network.
Kev, you got anything? I have one.
Hit me.
You got one? Huh?
Yeah. I don't know. Interestingly enough, I ran into a guy who had a relationship now, I guess, with Henrik von Schiele, who I think was one of the originators of Industry 4.0, and those principles, I think they came out of the World Economic Forum. How does that, some of the principles that you picked up while you were at like PwC or KPMG, and like, some of that is like, if you're a consultant, you probably want to have these customers for a long time. I don't know. Are you guys able to give these people the tools to maybe spend less on consultants and be more efficient? So that's just kind of where my head's at, if you want to pick that bone.
Yeah. So that's certainly part of the intent, right? We have a platform. It's self-learning. It's autonomous. It continuously learns, and there's a whole feedback loop between planning, visibility, monitoring, quality, and then aggregate kind of insights. The so what, right? How is my network performing? Where can I optimize? Where's the risk? And feed that back into the planning. And it's enabled by Athena, which is our AI tool.
Right.
And certainly, yes, it's not like the PwCs, the KPMGs, the big consultants. They're, I would say, a very small scope of what they do is focus on these kinds of problems. They do a lot more kind of IT implementation, et cetera. And I mean, they have a broad focus, but there are a lot of packaging consultants, cold chain consultants, consultants that are brought in to just kind of help, even just understand, like, how much product am I losing? How many excursions do I have? How much am I spending on the product disposition process? Like those, how can I reduce risk in my network? But those kinds of questions are continuously answered with highly specialized consultants in the industry. And yes, we believe a lot of that, a lot of the answers to those questions can be much more contextual and concrete and specific and accurate if it's system driven. So that's one piece. The second piece is, it's a lot of the trade-off decisions. So think about a pharmaceutical company that's got 3,000 shipping lanes, one lane being an origin destination pair, right? So like call it Brussels to Kentucky is one lane. Now, below that, there's a subset of many, many, many more routes. So each lane might have 3, 4, 5 different routes. Some of them may be validated and approved routes as a part of the pharmaceutical standard operating procedure. Some of them, their carriers are kind of taking whatever route they want. At the end of the day, the pharmaceutical company has very little visibility as to which routes are actually being taken and how that's impacting their performance. But those trade-off decisions around, should I ship on this lane through air? Can I ship through ocean and save cost? Should I ship next day air, or can I ship 3-day ground or 2-day ground? Do I need to qualify this package for 120 hours, or can I use a package that's 96 hours qualified and that will be enough? Answering those kinds of questions today, all that analysis that's done is based off of static data that's like years, quarters old, and it takes months to actually do that analysis on a lane by lane basis. And then by the time you've done the analysis, like, it's not even relevant anymore. So it's like, what's the point? We believe those kinds of questions and answers should be evaluated continuously based on performance data that's coming in with each incremental shipment. And it should kind of lay out the deviation from the plan. Everything in pharma is planned through lane risk assessments, through standard operating procedures. Nobody knows, once those things are set into place, if those plans are even effective. Nobody's going back and doing the feedback loop of, is my SOP effective, and is it accurate, and did I set this up right? So we believe there should be that continuous loop between what was originally planned. Now you have real world performance data. You have shipments flowing through. They perform a certain way, both from a risk standpoint and from an optimization standpoint. And now tie that back into the planning. Where should I focus my energy to modify my standard operating procedures and either optimize and improve the optimization of my network, or reduce risk, or take out cost?
So you're talking about pharma and the risks. It takes me back to my vast experience in the pharma industry. I sold sponsorships to pharma conferences back 25 years ago. So I feel like I'm an expert at it. But one of the
sponsorships too.
And you're talking about meticulous planning on risks. And from what I do know about pharma, manufacturing, production, packaging, that's all of those processes are meticulously planned and detail oriented, because you can't have any contamination in any of those processes. And then it's almost like, I'm sure they meticulously plan on the transportation and distribution side as well, but it's almost like you meticulously plan, and then if you're a pharma company, you lose a lot of control once it gets outside that door until it reaches its final destination. So I imagine it's something that they do worry about quite a bit, because they do plan for it meticulously, as you said, right?
I think they make plans for their plans that then
Exactly.
make plans for that. So yeah, no, I think that's a very accurate point. I think yeah, I mean, the lane risk assessment process is a real process that anytime before you ship a product, especially a new product that's coming to market, you're going to conduct a lane risk assessment, which is may incorporate test shipments. Like, you may deploy 100 loggers, 100 IoT devices, and see how networks perform. You may run some simulations as a part of that process. You may compare different packaging providers and different 3PLs and different IoT devices. And then once you kind of understand what that risk looks like, you document it all into this really, really, really specific standard operating procedure that it's quite long and detailed, and then you forget it, and then nobody cares, because you've kind of covered the bases. And then if anything ever happens, you have that document to say, well, I did a risk assessment. And that's kind of the problem today is, a lot of these risk assessments that are done are they're not overly accurate. They're not representative of what happens in the real world. And there's no feedback loop that then comes from the real world to say your plan was terrible, and here's why, and here's what you need to change. And so we think that's a must have if you truly want to get to zero waste in the industry, or at least put a big dent into the waste. You have to have that feedback loop between plan and real world performance. And so that's a big part of what we do. And because we have access to those SOPs, we bring those in on the front end. The platform can make very hyper contextual and specific recommendations, because we know which vendors are approved, which routes are validated, how different vendors perform in different parts of the world or on different modes of transport. So we can make really, really specific and actionable recommendations in accordance with those SOPs, which is a big value. The other thing, I think to your earlier point, Kevin, is you give up a lot of control once the product leaves your dock, and
a lot of control.
And I think, we have customers that, their typical routine, pharmaceutical customers, their typical QBR with their service providers is can you tell me how my network is performing? And the service providers will send over reports, and it's like, okay, here's my on-time delivery, here's my product quality issues, here's and it's 100% reliant on the 3PL. We think that information should be democratized, and it should drive accountability and essentially a source of truth amongst all parties. So we think that the shippers, the manufacturers, should have that level of transparency and should have much more insight as to what's happening in their networks, so that they can make those trade-off decisions when necessary.
Right. Interesting. And I guess maybe you lose all control when the goods leave the four walls. Some questions I'm sure the people you're talking to these days might be considering is like, do we lose all control when our data leaves the walls? Seems like that's something that you guys have thought about and found a solution for. Maybe not I think you and I initially talked about blockchain back in the day as a private ledger way to, keep people's data private while also kind of solving this problem.
That's what we talked to everyone back in the day about.
I know, dude. Blockchain was cool. Technology ahead of its time. I don't know. Still and at some point it may have a resurgence or application.
You gotta bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
That's right. But anyways, no, like, how do you guys think about that? That data problem? I think Athena maybe is part of that, but would love to just, I don't know. Is that something unique that you guys do that provides people to have access to the data that's theirs, make sure that data doesn't get shared with their competitors, et cetera, et cetera?
I would say, so yeah, I mean, the data does not get shared with competitors. I would say that within the value chain, the data is democratized between the shippers and the service providers and the IoT device providers and the packaging providers, right? So everybody's working off the same source of truth. Now, what's kind of interesting for, I guess, the shippers or the product owners, the cargo owners, is they can start to understand, like, how are my partners performing differently in different parts of the world across different modes of transport, everything from 3PLs to IoT device companies to packaging providers. And then how are also, how are my peers? How are the transportation and quality networks of my peers, other pharmaceutical companies, effectively comparing to my own? So it kind of gives you that, that benchmark understanding of, how am I doing? Is what I'm seeing, is it anomalies? Is it kind of a broader trend within the industry? And then what, most importantly with Athena, what action should I take to either improve performance, reduce risk, or reduce cost in my network? And that's, we try to make that as actionable as possible.
We talked about reducing risks. I believe the last time we talked, whenever that was, it could have been a year ago or 2 years ago or 2 months ago. Who knows these days? But we're talking about Athena, right? Your agent. And I believe we were talking about predictability, right? Being predictive, right? We're talking about reducing risks in maybe the traditional way of taking action based on data with a lag, right? But actually be able to take snippets and be really predictive about what's going to happen. Do I have that right?
That's right. So the way that we think about network risk is twofold. There's the risk that's happening across your live shipments that are out and about and traveling around the world today, right? That's the risk that's immediate and that is the risk that you can still influence through immediate action. So you can intervene, you cannot intervene. So that's half of it. The other half is, how do I aggregate once the shipment is complete? How do I aggregate all that data and then make sense of it on a lane, route, waypoint basis,
Mhm.
and incorporate the output of that into my planning process to reduce tomorrow's risk, to reduce future shipment risk, right?
Mhm.
And yes, the predictability piece comes in on that first one. So it's the here and now. So what's happening in my network? We found that, so companies will typically most of the time they're not monitoring their own goods. They're partnering with service providers to monitor goods. And there's these monitoring services, right? And there's monitoring companies. Now it's very expensive to pay somebody to look at a bunch of dots on the map. We've found that device alerts, so the IoT alerts that come off when there's a temperature issue and when there's something, shock, whatever, that those alerts are, they're present on 20 to 25% of your shipments. So they're going to continuously be going off, which means all of those people that are looking at thousands of shipments in your network daily, they're going to be pretty busy. At the end of the day, the device alerts we found are not a good proxy for actual shipment risk. So there's a lot of noise in there. The majority of the time, there's no real risk to product, and they don't take in, for example, consideration towards how much stability life remains on the product, or how far is it from the destination, or how much thermal life on the packaging is actually left, right? Because they don't have that data.
Yeah.
And so when you start incorporating a holistic view and a holistic approach of all these different factors, you can essentially silence a lot of the device alerts that don't really matter. And you can reduce the amount of overhead, the amount of time, improve the productivity of those monitoring teams. And yes, you can bring in predictive elements to make some of those like risk assessments better. So for example, predicting time of arrival, predicting when the next temperature deviation or excursion will happen on a particular shipment. Those are some predictive elements to that broader live shipment risk algorithm that we have. That tells us, for example, if we know that a shipment is late, well, maybe if we know that a shipment is 2 hours late, maybe that doesn't matter. If we know it's 12 hours late and there's an issue with there's 8 hours left on a thermal life of a package and the product stability is already at 40%, that's a huge issue, right? So it's bringing all of those factors together, and there's many of them,
Right.
and then giving the context to those monitoring teams and operators to actually have confidence in what they're intervening with, responding to, instead of just chasing every single device alert and spending $200 a shipment on hypercare. That's excessive. So
Right. Really interesting. So I saw you had a post about flowers recently. So like, let's say you're a flower, cargo owner, and you're trying to get flowers to people's doors for whatever holiday it may be. You're using PAXAFE and you've got issues, flagging. Your monitoring team is dealing with a lot of crap. What does it look like? Like, who's responsible? Is it that same team at those organizations that then figure out, oh, okay, like maybe we need to source our flowers from somewhere else, or move our farm, or whatever it may be, use a different carrier? What does that look like practically within an organization, or in like from a product user experience?
So I'd say, flowers specifically, I would say are much there's a lot of scrap and loss in the flower supply chain, especially around holidays, Valentine's Day,
Right.
Christmas, New Year's. July 4th to some Labor Day.
Well, then maybe pharmaceuticals a better
Yeah.
example. I remember I had an interesting talk with Johnson & Johnson recently, and they're planning like 15 years ahead for some stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe pharma is a better example.
Yeah. So pharma, the need is always and ever present. So today, if you're not using PAXAFE, or if you're not using a solution like PAXAFE, you're effectively, if you think about the product cycle, the product life cycle through the transportation value chain, you're doing your planning typically in Excel, and like Excel spreadsheet calculations, lane risk assessments. Every provider, every 3PL has their own kind of risk tool. So they'll provide their kind of risk. When you submit for a lane request, or you're trying to set up a new lane, provider is going to send a bunch of SOPs and details with regards to their own inputs towards that. And then it's up to the manufacturer to kind of conduct that risk analysis. Then you have visibility. Visibility today, it's like 3, 4, 5, 6 different platforms. So if I'm a pharmaceutical company, from a business continuity standpoint, I am multi-sourcing devices. I'm either dual sourcing, parallel sourcing devices. So I'm working with provider X, provider Y, provider Z. That's 3 different platforms to log into. Then I have my parcel networks, right? Like UPS, FedEx, DHL. For carrier milestones, I got to log in there. For passive temperature data loggers, that's typically a different platform that I got to log into. In some cases, I may be using like some aggregation platform for visibility. I got to log in there. So at the end of the day, I have like multiple platforms to log into. From a monitoring standpoint, I'm paying a bunch of money for people to chase down those device alerts. And it's typically like the device providers will have services for monitoring, or the big 3PL, right? And 4PLs have services for monitoring, but you're paying, hundreds of dollars for hypercare. From a product quality perspective, once the shipment is done, again, a very paper-based and manual process around conducting it's typically a fairly complex time out of range calculation. So was there an excursion? Pharma has very specific rules for, whether the excursion is cumulative or continuous, meaning like you got to calculate it one way or a different way. Then you got to do like the math and figure out, okay, is this product usable? And then there's a workflow typically that gets engaged for accepting, rejecting, or quarantining that product. Each incremental hour, day, week that you spend kind of in that release phase before you accept or reject that product, it's costing the pharmaceutical company a ton of money. And then finally, the analytics piece. And today, as I mentioned, it's consultants. It's internal data folks. It's not dynamic. It's based off static data. So that's without a solution like PAXAFE. Now, if you bring in PAXAFE, we take a look at those kind of like 5 pillars through the transportation network, everything from planning to visibility to monitoring to quality decision, all the way through to analytics. We digitize and automate a huge chunk. So, we digitize that planning process. We make the lane risk assessment really, really seamless and streamlined. We digitize the SOPs. So now they're feeding directly into the rest of your kind of network performance and real world data. So that's number one. From a visibility standpoint, we're data agnostic. So we bring in all the IoT real-time devices, passive devices, carrier milestones, ELD, all into a singular view. And so you don't need to go to 3, 4, 5 different platforms. It's all there, right? Monitoring, we've got the live shipment risk algorithm that reduces device noise that there is. So you're actually only responding to the stuff that matters. The product release piece, so that accept, reject decision, we've digitized that process as well. And then companies can choose how automated to make that process. In pharma, there's a sensitivity around making it fully automated across 100% of your shipments. But you can automate a good chunk of it. So shipments without any temperature issues or excursions, those are typically set on automatic approval. Shipments that have issues or excursions, there's typically a workflow, a configurable workflow that's set up for manual approval rejection, but it's still digitized. And then finally, those aggregate insights and overall kind of how is my network performing? Where's the risk? Again, that's running 24/7. Athena, our AI tool, is continuously running that analysis and pumping out recommendations back into the planning as they become relevant. And so we envision this flywheel effect, right, where like each module is feeding the next, and then it comes back from completion of the shipment, aggregate the data back into the planning phase, and it truly does create like the initial semblance of an autonomous cold chain, where we think that people that work in planning, in transportation and quality can really focus on the stuff that truly matters, as opposed to like chasing down device alerts and trying to crunch numbers on lane performance data. So.
Right, or chasing temperature flags that are a waste of their time.
That's exactly right. Yep. Well said.
There we go. What's the one thing that you found surprising, or really that most people don't know, a commodity or a product that is very sensitive to temperature that you wouldn't think about?
I would say a lot of like how sensitive certain pharmaceutical products or biologics are, and in the cell and gene space, especially. Like there are products where once you breach a temperature exposure of 30 minutes, you're done. Like that product is done, and it's not cheap. And so I would say the surprising element, of course, is just the sensitivity of the product. Like 30 minutes is nothing, right? Like you land a plane and you're sitting on a tarmac, you're there for 30 minutes. You deliver a product onto a dock, it might be sitting there for 30 minutes. So I think that's one of the pieces that are surprising. I would say, I mean, I also find surprising how much product gets, especially on the produce side, on the food side, how much product actually gets approved by the retailer, but then there's a lingering impact at the point of retail, either pre-sale or post-sale, where and I live through this myself on like a weekly basis. I've stopped shopping at certain retailers because I'm so sick of buying product that says it's good, and then the next day it changes color and goes bad. And usually those issues are stemming back to temperature control issues in the supply chain earlier in the value chain. So even if the product looks good, the shelf life is drastically impacted if it's exposed to bad temperatures or improper humidity or something else earlier in the value chain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like lettuce, meat, just terrible. How much food I have to throw away routinely.
Dude, my cat's salmon pate.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets cooked in trailers, and he gives it a sniff, and he just eating that.
The cat's not eating it. That's not a good sign.
Right.
Yeah.
But
no, it's really not.
Still paid 80 cents for that, can of tuna, though.
That's right.
That's why you buy it at clearance, right? When it's past the date anyway, it's really on sale, and you got to eat it right then and there. That night. You don't have to worry about shelf life whatsoever at that point.
You should start a just-in-time food business.
I should. Oh, so Ilya, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for joining us here today on Dude, What's the Bid? Kind of how does our audience, number one, how does our audience get in touch with you, learn more about PAXAFE?
PAXAFE.com, www.paxsafe.com. I would say, my email is just my name at PAXAFE.com, my first name. Email, LinkedIn. You can find me at, a lot of the pharmaceutical conferences. We've started going to some of the produce conferences as well in the last year. Manifest, almost every year. A lot of
that was my second question, besides contact, is when are you going to be out in the wild again? Out at a conference where someone might run into you face to face.
Yeah. Well, so out in the wild, I'm going to be traveling for the next 2 weeks, Canada and Europe. So that's, if you're out in that kind of wild, I'd love to, make a pit stop and meet. Beyond Canada and Europe, I think our next big conference is Logi Pharma Boston in September. So we'll be there. We'll be representing. We've got some really, really exciting things planned for that conference. Both, I think, we're going to be hosting an event, kind of like a private event. We'll be doing some joint customer sessions with some of our great customers, and yeah, I think we've got a keynote or something of that sort. So it'll be a great conference. If you do intend to, especially if you're in pharma or a logistics service provider and you're going to be at that conference, we'd love to hook up.
Nice. Very good. Casey, anything to add? Any?
No, got another supply chain conference going on September 9th and 10th in Columbus. Change. It's owned by the Association for Supply Chain Management. Got a cool pitch competition going on. Some cool companies, some other P53 companies pitching in that. I don't know. Might be an audience you could be interested in. But Change.
CHANGE.
CHAINGE.
Yeah, you guys just wrapped up a conference in Europe, right? We're in Europe.
Yeah, we did. We had one in Brussels.
Brussels, that's right.
Bart DeMonk, who's the MC, he's over there. He'll be the MC for the North American event as well. But no, it was a great conference. Evidently, I wasn't there, but I know some of the sponsors, Oracle and Moody's, were really happy with the roundtables and the conversations that were going on there. But yeah, man, encourage you to check it out, and I encourage anybody in the audience to I don't know, what does it look like getting somebody set up on PAXAFE, right? There's a whole lot of integrations going on. I know we're done here, but how do you guys implement and make sure that you're doing things right by all your customers?
Yeah, so it's dependent on we've got 5 modules as a part of our platform. So rolling out one module versus all 5 is a little bit different. It's nothing like a TMS or an ERP implementation where it's like millions or tens of millions of dollars in like 18 to 36 months, right? It's nothing like that. I would say even with all 5 modules, our kind of average implementation time is like 8 to 10 weeks without the need for custom integrations. If there are integrations that we don't have in place where you need certain integrations, it might go a bit longer, but I would say 2 to 3 months is pretty par for the course for everything. There are parts of the platform or modules where you can literally be set up and start getting value from our platform in less than a month. So it just depends on the modular aspect and which modules you select and whether you're doing like API versus platform, et cetera, right? So you can engage with the platform in a number of different ways. But it's a pretty quick and seamless implementation. I think we've got it down at this point to a science. Now, especially in pharma, there are instances where, say, pharmaceutical companies have to do like a full audit and GXP validation. So if they're going to use our platform to make quality decisions and automate quality workflows, we have to go through a GXP kind of validation process. That is entirely driven, that the pace there is entirely driven from company to company. So it depends. But that's typically not a blocker to get started and start using the platform. And the GXP portion kind of lags and comes in to effect at post go live. So but that should give you, at least a high level understanding. We're talking 1 to 3 months, depending on what you're using, and it's pretty quick and painless. So
nice. Very good. Well, thank you again, Ilya, for coming in, and best of luck for the back half of 2025. We're there already, the third day of the second half of the year. So hopefully it goes smoother than the first half.
Oh yeah, it's been a busy first half, and I think the second half is gonna blow the first half out of the water. So
that's good. I hope so too.
So
I appreciate thank you again.
That. It was nice chatting with you. Thank you.
You bet. Ilya Preston, the co-founder and CEO of PAXAFE. Casey, big plans for the 4th?
Barbecuing, gardening, and maybe a little bit of home improvement. Nothing too crazy. What about you?
Barbecue in the pool.
Hell yeah.
Barbecue in the pool. So that's what we'll be doing. Should be relaxing. Nice 3-day weekend. Get back into action for the rest of the summer until the end of September. I can't wait. It's been busy the last couple of months, and hopefully it stays at least that busy, if not busier, for the rest of the summer.
That's right, man. Praying for it. Wishing everybody happy 4th of July. USA.
Yeah. Happy 4th of July to everybody. And until then, I will be eastbound and down.
Sounds good, man. Catch you next week.
You bet. See you, Casey.
Peace.